This is a short presentation on writing lesson plans. Wonderful things don't just happen in your classroom. If you want them to happen, you must make wonderful plans. Great, where do we start? You've read about creating curriculum in your textbook. You read about some of the classic models. Some of you may even be using one of them. Curriculum come with guidelines for planning. We don't have to invent the wheel every day in our classrooms. Most facilities have decided upon a curriculum and you are expected to follow it when you enter your classroom. Most facilities subscribe to a certain philosophy which often dictates the curriculum. If you teach in a church facility, you incorporate religious studies into your plans. Inner city schools may teach differently than a school out in Immokalee. Small schools differ from large schools. These are all factors that influence your planning. You may often hear these factors referred to as part of the invisible or hidden curriculum. You don't directly plan for any of these, but they certainly do influence your plan. Why do we lesson plan? Well, if you don't have a clue, if you don't understand what a child is learning, then that learning is accidental. It just kind of happens. Every single experience that a child has impacts him or her in some way. To develop in all aspects of their lives, children must interact with objects and people in their environment. This developmental process can be strengthened if the right activities are matched with the child's needs. Planning makes the teacher think about the learning and/or development that is taking place within each child. Children learn more if the teacher understands what the child is able to learn and what the potentiality of each piece of equipment and each manipulative and each art activity has to offer. Yes, this is really a very difficult task. The process of planning. We have the Florida Early Learning Standards to help us plan. I used the standards for 4-year-olds in this class, but there are some from birth to age 5. The standards is a very comprehensive document, 207 pages, containing age-appropriate information and reflections about how young children explore, create, and think. It has been a long process creating and publishing these jewels. Many movers and shakers in the state of Florida were involved, and the domains, components, and standards were revised and revised. They are reviewed often. I have listed the 5 domains here. Spend some quality time with this document. If you are already a teacher, you know how important they are in everyday planning. The major project due towards the end of the course will ask you to use these. What next? A major component of lesson planning is writing objectives. Your book defines it as the specific purposes or teaching techniques that interpret the goals of planning, schedules, and routines, as well as meaningful descriptions of what children are expected to learn. They will meet the domains as listed in the Florida Early Learning Standards. But what are we trying to achieve? An objective clearly spells that out. Do we sometimes deviate from our plans and objectives? Absolutely. Do we sometimes find better ways of achieving our objectives? Often. Write it down to implement the next time you are teaching a similar lesson. Lesson plans and objectives are never meant to bypass that teachable moment. They often just keep us on track. Objectives guide us. They hold us accountable, a very important factor in teaching today. If you know where you are going, students will too, especially if we tell them up front. We'll look at an objective in a minute on balance. We can talk about balance in our circle time, read a book on balance, make children aware of what we are doing. Children enjoy being held to high expectations. Instead of fighting accountability, embrace it and work with it. Brain research is beginning to indicate that we have misinterpreted what young children are capable of. They love new challenges. A child raised on challenges will continue to face new challenges with enthusiasm as he or she grows up. A very important skill in this day and age. Here's the nitty-gritty of writing objectives. It's not easy. This mnemonic ABCD should help you. Who is your audience? An objective for a toddler will be different than an objective for a preschooler. What exactly do you want the child to do, and how will they do it? We think about something called background knowledge here. What does a student already need to know to be able to accomplish this task? Some students may not be ready for the task. Lastly, how will you judge competency? You can see 80% is considered mastery. Often this is not part of the objective because it is so hard to measure some things. But if you remember ABCDs, you should be fine. For many beginning objective writers, it is hard to start. So these action verbs, or more professionally referred to as behavioral terms, should help. These are observable terms. What others can you think of? This objective came from a student in a past class. The audience is colored green, the student. The behavior is colored red. Will be able to walk the entire length of the balance beam steadily. The condition, standard balance beam raised to a new height. You could even dictate what this means in inches if you want, is blue. And the degree in pink is without falling off in 6 seconds. Yes, it is very complicated. Will you write objectives like this when you've been teaching for several years? Probably not, because you have internalized many of the separate parts of this objective. But parents love them. It explains exactly what you want, how you want it, and how you will judge it. Our helicopter parents of today would probably buy a balance beam and practice with their child. Sad, but probably true. Here are a few more examples submitted by past students to give you some ideas when you write objectives for your lesson plans. Feel free to review this presentation as often as you need. Thank you for your attendance.